Hello and welcome back. In today's video, what I thought we would do is have a bit of a walk around the back garden here, and I'll give you a bit of an update for, where are we now? We are mid-October. So I'll give you a sort of a mid-October garden tour and just sort of show you how everything's looking, what's flowering, what's doing really well, and what's maybe not doing so well. But while I'm giving you that tour, what I wanted to do was kind of share with you my tips and sort of my process, I guess, for creating this space. This back garden brings me so much joy. It's just unbelievable. I don't think I ever kind of realized when I started it how much joy it would bring me, and just to be able to come out here in this little sort of whimsical paradise and just be able to walk around and sort of watch the seasons change and see how everything changes each week, each day, has just really been incredible. And I enjoy this space so much. So I thought I would share sort of my tips, as I said, and my sort of like the steps and the process that I took to kind of get to this point. I am by no means done. Any gardeners out there will tell you a garden is never truly done. I'm always inspired by something new that I've seen, and wanting to add a new, bench seat somewhere or a new water feature. And so the garden here will always sort of be evolving, but it has certainly come a long way from when I first moved in. So when I first moved into this space, probably maybe 5-6 years ago now, I think, this whole backyard was just grass. So there is a clothesline just up over there, which you've probably seen before, and these sort of larger trees here were there, and I'll kind of show you where that original garden was. But all of this was nothing. It was just grass, and I'll be honest with you, it was not even very nice grass. It was that sort of really terrible grass that had like lots of weeds throughout it, and it had we call them bindies. I don't know if other people call them that, but like sort of stingers in the grass, so you couldn't walk on the grass or anything like that. It was really just terrible grass, and if I hadn't sort of chosen to kind of go down the route of this sort of style of garden, I would have had to redo all the grass anyway. But I have always wanted a space like this, just really, I can't even think of another word. It's just a whimsical, fun space. It's, I don't take it too seriously. I just pick plants that I love. It's trial and error. Sometimes things don't work, sometimes they do, and it's incredible. But yes, so I kind of wanted to show you around the garden for mid-October, show you what's doing really well. And while I'm doing that, I'll kind of share my sort of tips, my process for how I've kind of gotten to this current state. I probably have some video footage, I think, or photos of what the garden looked like at various stages over the years. So if I'm able to locate those, I will also pop them on screen as we're walking around the garden and I'm in that particular section of the garden. That way you can kind of see what the transformations kind of has been like. But yes, so without further ado, let's start. Maybe let's not start back here. Maybe let's start up over on the patio sort of area. So this is sort of what I would deem the patio area. And this is on a bit of a, it actually slopes quite far down here. And so this is all sort of terrace gardening that has taken quite a long time to sort of get to this point where it's looking really sort of full and lush. This is all looking really lovely. I've got these gorgeous potted plants here. And these beautiful little flowers. So these are like a very delicate little bloom, and they are in person there's sort of a bit of a lilac-y colour. They're looking gorgeous. And then you've got those ones there. And then just in this next section over, you've got, this is the same plant as those lilac ones, but it's in a sort of hot pink floral. Look at how beautiful they are. We have the sun deck area. So this is something that I added maybe 2-3 years ago now. And this sort of little deck here, so as I said before, it sort of slopes down underneath, and this was just dirt, this space when I moved in, and I sort of always knew that I wanted to put a sun deck out here. In winter and summer, it is just quite a little sun trap here in the early mornings. And so when it's winter and it's cold, it's so beautiful to be able to come out here and sort of just lie on the chairs, bring a book, relax, get a bit of sun. And even in summer, early mornings, be able to come out here and get some early morning sun is just beautiful here. And so this here, you can see all of these, they're actually fairy lights. So at night time, this whole deck is lit up and it has like a really slow sort of blink with some warm sort of fairy lights on, which is really lovely when you're outside at night time. And then over here, we have this gorgeous little cluster of plants. These roses, so these are mini roses. If you have been watching my channel for a little while, you'll know that I love me some mini roses. So we've got these beautiful pale yellow, and then some of these need deadheading. Work in the garden is never done. And then this really sort of sweet pale dusky sort of pink colour, and you can see here there's just all these buds. This rose bush is doing really well at this time of year. And then just down here, this is, they call it like a snacking capsicum. So there we go. Can you see all the capsicums in here? Can you see that? So they're little capsicums, and they're just sort of a mini kind of capsicum. They can kind of pop in like, you know, scrambled eggs or omelettes, that kind of thing. So it's just very handy to have, because I do like omelettes, and I often have an omelette for breakfast, but there are quite a few in there. So I'm going to have to harvest those, and I can use them in my cooking this week. So they're coming along really well. There are also these little mini roses here, which are a really pretty red. I probably need to fertilize this a little bit. It looks like its little leaves are struggling. And then over here, we actually planted this lavender together. Was that maybe like a month or so ago? But these are some really just gorgeous lavender plants. The smell of the flowers, the lavender flowers, and just the actual like plant itself. Oh, it's the strongest lavender smell. Absolutely gorgeous. Very, very happy with those. This is doing really well. Hopefully it'll start to get flowers now that we're getting into the warmer weather. And this is the hydrangea. I'm just over the moon with this hydrangea. it has never flowered like this before, ever. And it's just got these incredible flowers. Can you sort of see that? I think this is a lace hydrangea from memory. And so it's sort of got the smaller cluster of flowers and then the larger flowers, and they are sort of a lilac colour, sort of a little bit purple and a little bit pink on the flowers. But we've got another one coming out there. Also down here. You can see these ones here at the back. It's just loving life in this space. It gets a lot of morning sunlight and afternoon shade, which I think it's just definitely the one for this lavender plant. I think I've actually had to move this plant maybe 3 times from other positions where it just was not happy, and I sort of kept trying different places. And finally, we have found its location that it is happy at. So we're now back here in sort of the back garden proper area, and what I wanted to sort of talk about first was, I guess for me and for this space, my sort of first step in the process, and my tip for you would be to be realistic. Be realistic with the space you have, with the amount of time you want to invest in a garden, and your financial situation. So I definitely think your first sort of, if you have a space that's sort of a blank canvas space like how I had here, and you are inspired by my garden, hopefully, to create sort of a space for yourself, I think that is definitely the first principle, and the first thing that you need to consider is be really realistic with yourself. The space you have will kind of define the type of garden you can have, but it also defined the amount of time that you have and the expense. If you have a massive back garden, it will obviously be more expensive for you to plant it out. It will obviously take more time each week for you to maintain it. Gardening is a lot of work, and it is expensive. Quite frankly, like it is expensive. Plants are expensive. So be aware of that. And I think if you've kind of got that initial sort of thought process when you're looking at your blank sort of canvas space, keep those things in mind. Be realistic. And I mean, that works, that particular principle works if you have sort of a smaller garden like what I have here, if you have acres of garden, or if you just have a windowsill in your apartment or a balcony. Be realistic with that. How much sun does your windowsill get to sort of, you may want to plant up a bunch of vegetables in your windowsill, but if you're not getting a lot of sun there, maybe that's not realistic, and it would be a drain financially for you to keep constantly buying, seeds and soil and trying to do that. Also, again, keep in mind the amount of time that you want to spend. If you're really time poor, you definitely want to look at a garden that is low maintenance. But yeah, so that is my first sort of principle. So how I applied that to my space. So being realistic with the space I had, I obviously have said I have quite a small space here, so I couldn't sort of have, big ponds and weeping willows and that kind of thing. Being realistic with the time that I have, I probably have maybe a few hours, I would say, every week. So maybe 3 days a week, I can sort of pop out here for an hour just to kind of keep up maintenance. Therefore, I did not want a garden that was massive because I just don't have the time to maintain that. And financially, this garden is perfect for me. Particularly now that I've got it to this level after 6 years, everything's kind of established. A lot of it is established, doing really well. And so financially, it's not a hardship for me to continue to maintain that. So yes, that is my first sort of step, I suppose, or the first step that I took in my process when I was assessing my space. How cute are these little foxtails? And this plant is just doing so well. Look at them. They're like little, they're furry. These little flowers are really furry. I will say, massive tip that I have learnt, if you are not fond of weeding, which I am not, ground covers are your friend. You'll see as we're walking around today, I have a lot of ground covers, and not only are they beautiful, but they suppress the weeds so that you're not weeding as much. And again, that kind of goes back to the principle I just spoke about of, you know, trying to make sure your garden fits you and fits with the time you have to devote to it. Look at this. Can you see all the little buds? Wow. I've never seen this plant flower before. I wonder what they'll look like. And you can see that the white crepe myrtle has put on so much growth since the last time I showed you. Do you remember? I think it would have been a couple of weeks ago now I showed you, and she just had little tiny buds. Now look at all of that growth. Isn't that just, oh, Mother Nature is just so incredible that in such a short period of time that it just grows that quickly. Quite a number of the, so we're sort of coming into, we're in spring now, we're sort of midway through spring with mid-October, and a number of these grasses are just sort of starting to shoot up their flower stalks now, which is really sweet. This one over here has actually flowered, so I will show you that. Look at it. Isn't that gorgeous? It's this really just gorgeous pale blue with the white. They're really long-lived flowers as well. So these will sort of bloom for just weeks and weeks before they kind of die off. The butterfly bush that we planted together a few weeks ago is doing really well in this position. I've got another butterfly bush further into the garden that's a little bit more mature than this one, so you'll be able to sort of see, this is sort of a little baby one, and then you'll be able to see a larger one. And again, beautiful little purple flowers on these stripy whites. The Bidens are just doing so well. Look at those gorgeous flowers. And you can see here the jasmine is flowering, which is actually quite early. We don't normally get these sort of flowers sort of more in November, December, but I think we've had some unseasonably hot weather, so it has flowered early and just smells divine. So gorgeous. So this little section's looking great. Vegetables are coming along. Leeks and that are looking good. Cucumbers are doing okay. We planted these cucumbers together a little while back now, and we actually had a random cold snap. So I lost a few cucumbers in that cold snap, unfortunately. Leeks are looking amazing. I'm going to hopefully use some of those tomorrow in my cooking. I have to say the kitchen sort of garden area here is a little bit sparse at the moment. I have some very, very exciting things coming up. I'm not going to go into it too much now. You're going to see it all. I'll film it all, so you'll be able to see it in the coming weeks. But I've just got some really exciting things coming up, and I didn't want to put a lot of pressure on it. I have gone a little bit light in the kitchen garden this growing season. Normally this would just be chockers with different like vegetables and like heaps of tomatoes, and I'd have garlic going and pumpkins and all sorts of things. But I've sort of held off this year because of this very, very exciting thing. All right, I've just been distracted from the onions. Look at all the little tomatoes coming out. Yay. They're doing really well. I've got 2 tomato bushes here and they're doing just, yeah, really good for this time of year. So hopefully they will start to ripen soon. But they will be delicious. And just giving you a bit of a close-up here. So again, this is ground cover here. So it just really helps to suppress the weeds. Obviously, these sweet little flowers are just delightful. It's like a little carpet of these little white and purple flowers. They're so cute. These here are self-seeding. I don't ever plant them, but they just continue to come up. And they sort of come up everywhere. So I sort of let them have their way and they just do their thing. But as you can see, I have really embraced the ground covers in this garden bed. All through there. And then look at these massive flowers. Aren't they gorgeous? So these are the buds. So as you can see, this is just covered. Ooh, windy. This is absolutely covered in buds. And like you can see at the back here, like they're all just starting to come out now into these just truly spectacular flowers. And that's one there. As you can see, the little bud has just opened up and the flower's just starting. So, the next little kind of process I took in my sort of cottage garden plan, I guess, the development's what I'm looking for, and my cottage garden development is, so once you've been realistic with yourself, you kind of know what you're looking for, you know how much time you want to spend, etc. The next thing I looked at was structural things. So it will save you time and it will save you money if you put the structural things you want in your garden in first before you start all the planning. So what I mean by that, and what I sort of did, these concrete paths here, they're structural. So think in terms of like pathways, think irrigation, think garden sheds, think water tanks, electricity. So if you want, lights throughout your garden, those sorts of things are sort of structural, and I would highly recommend doing them before you sort of really get into your planting. That isn't to say you cannot do structural things once you've planted your garden up. It just means you might have to move plants, or they might have to take up pathways and things like that to be able to run irrigation pipes or run electricity. And that could be expensive for one, and also time consuming. And you might also lose some really beautiful plants in the process. So for me, when I was sort of looking at this space, I actually drew sort of on an A4 sheet of paper, nothing fancy at all, but I outlined the space and sort of thought about how I wanted it structured. So for me, because of the space I have, the size of the space, the amount of time that I want to spend in the garden, and my budget, a cottage style garden suited me best. So a garden where I could kind of just add things in when I saw things that I loved, that was quite whimsical, a little bit wild, was definitely right up my alley and something I had always wanted. A cottage garden is also very forgiving. So as we're walking around today, you're going to see there's deadheading that needs to happen. There is weeding that needs to happen. And that's just part and parcel of having a garden. There's always work. There's never a time where there's just nothing to do. There's always so much to do. But yes, so I drew the plan, sort of the layout of my back garden on an A4 sheet of paper, and then I kind of just mapped in the garden beds I wanted and how I wanted the pathways set up, and then once I knew where the garden beds were and where the pathways were going to be, I had a good idea of how I wanted to run the irrigation. So I could get my irrigation guys out, before I even put any of this concrete down, and get them to sort of, because I knew roughly, I think I had like spray paint, and I'd kind of spray painted where like all of these garden beds were going to be, so they knew, and they actually ran all the piping and set up my irrigation first. I don't have any electricity in the back garden here, but if that's something that you're interested in for your garden, I would probably sort of, you do your irrigation and you do your electricity. But once I had my irrigation down, I then got a concreter out, and they went through and concreted all of these little footpaths here. So it very much creates, the footpaths here are quite circular, and what that sort of meant for me was I could come out here with a cup of tea and just wander around this space. It is a small space, as I've said, but being able to kind of walk around, each of the garden beds, be able to see the plants from the different angles, sort of makes it feel like a bigger space to me. So that's probably my next sort of comment to you, would just be the next step in the process I took was looking at all my structural kinds of things. When we get around the other side of the garden, you'll see, like, I've added garden sheds. I've added those things after. That's not a problem. So, if you don't think of something and, 2 years down the track, you decide, you didn't think you wanted a water fountain right at the beginning, and then 2 years down the track you're like, I desperately want a water fountain, that's my vision, I think that would just complete the space. You can always run piping for that, but it's just easier and more cost effective to do it right at the beginning. And as you know from my garden, I actually have 2 water fountains out the back here, and they're solar water fountains. They require no electricity, no plumbing. And so there's always like other alternatives and things you can kind of look at to sort of make your dream a reality and make the space what you want it to be. I was just going to pop in here and show you. Look at these flowers. Aren't they just... Wow, the purple of them is just not coming through on camera at all. It's a really vibrant purple. They're just beautiful. And the next one's sort of starting to open up there. Wildflowers are doing really well. The roses in this pot have just been doing the most. We've just had such a continuous supply of roses here. Look at them. I've got a little bit of deadheading to do out here. I'll try and tackle that tomorrow. They're all looking so good. The peach tree just here is also looking really good. No fruit on that yet. And then the wildflowers that we planted together a few weeks ago are doing really amazing. And I have to show you, look at this. Look how tall it is. Isn't that just incredible? And it's got these beautiful flowers. Not flowers yet, but like the buds of these flowers. I'm so intrigued to see how that flowers in the coming weeks. Wow. Those wildflower seeds were just such an incredible purchase from Bunnings. My goodness. I will be buying more of those the next time I'm there. The orange trees are doing really well. Look. This is a little baby navel orange, and there's more down here. So fingers crossed, in around June, July next year, we will have big, beautiful, juicy navel oranges. This will be the first time this tree has fruited. I have 2 navel orange trees, so I have this one here and this one here. This particular navel orange tree has fruited before, but it doesn't look like it has any fruit on it this year. So this one is the one that I'm watching. And again, you see ground covers. All of this is all just self-seeding. I've not planted any of those. This here is a lemon tree. It has just gone wild. So much growth. It has flowered as well, but I don't know if I can see. I wonder if you can see any. I don't know. It's a little far away from me. I don't know if I can see any oranges, lemons in there. And then this one here is a little baby seedless mandarin tree. It has fruited before, and we have had fruit probably 2 years in a row, but we had those storms a couple of weeks ago, and this was flowering at the time, and I think that the heavy winds and the rain knocked most of the flowers off. So I'm worried we may not get any mandarins this year, or next year. I absolutely love these. So this water fountain here is silent at the moment. We're in shade in the backyard here at this point, so the solar panel isn't in the sun, which is why it's not going. Pretty little yellow flowers. Again, completely self-seeded. This is self-seeded and this is self-seeded, so I didn't plant any of this. It has just come up all by itself. This is a cascade lily pilly, and it flowered recently. You can see it has these really fun pom-pom pale pink flowers. The bees have just loved it. Every time I've sort of walked past, the whole plant is just humming. You can probably see just in there, there's a little bee doing his thing in there. But yes, they've just absolutely loved it. Little pathway is overgrown. I really need to get in here and just cut all of this down a bit so I can access it a bit better. The bees are going to bed. So these are the Australian native stingless bees. Can you sort of see them there? So it is late evening here. So you can see they're all just heading back to the hive. They've been busy all day. Can you see that one there with the little pollen on his legs? Her legs, I think it's a her. I think the worker bees are hers. But that is the bees. So we've had this hive for quite a number of years now, actually. It's, as I said, it's a native Australian bee. It's a rescue hive. We can't access the hive at all, so I don't interfere with them in any way. We don't harvest like any honey from them or anything like that. They just basically live in the garden, and they are just delightful. Absolutely delightful to watch. They help pollinate all of our flowers. I see them all, you know, when you're working in the garden and you sort of look over at flowers and that, and it's our little bees in there. But yes, at this time of day, they are heading back to the hive. But yes, as I said, this is a rescue hive, so I think loggers cut this down but preserved the beehive itself. And yeah, it's been in our garden here for quite a long time, and they've just seemed really happy here. So, you know, I don't keep them here. They could swarm and leave if they wanted to, but they've been here happy for years now, and they just kind of do their thing, and we sort of mutually respect each other and leave each other be. But they are just so funny to watch in the flowers, and I love, and you would have just seen just then when they have like the little tiny pollen sacs on the side of their legs. It's just so cute. So that's the bees. I will head up through here. We planted these together a couple of weeks ago. They're doing so well. I wish I had gotten more of them. They're just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. The color, the flowers, they're so hardy. Yeah, definitely need to add those to my list of plants to buy. So this is just another perspective. I have this little, I'm sort of halfway up this little pathway now, and in here are the ginger and turmeric rhizomes that I planted a few months ago now. We did it together and harvested the previous year's ginger and turmeric, so I got a heap of ginger and turmeric out of that, and then I kept a few rhizomes out, and I've actually replanted them, and they'll kind of just stay in there now for probably a further 12 months. It'll be July next year when they are ready for harvest, and hopefully I will get a lot of ginger and turmeric again. So I'm just heading up this pathway. And going back to my comment earlier about structural things, so obviously I've put in concrete pathways here, but I didn't put a pathway up here, and I have just decided to do this as years have gone on to kind of, this little area is just such like a magical place to me. I don't know why I feel that way. It's like quite like a woodland forest vibe, and I just, being able to walk up here, up the pathway, just, yeah, it's just really a little wild, a little whimsical. I just love it. But this here, so this is a mature butterfly bush. So we had the little baby butterfly bush a little while ago in the garden, but this is the mature one. And you can see, so that's sort of the base of the plant there. And then when they flower, they throw up these stalks of flowers, and they just sway in the breeze, and they're such, I find them really relaxing to watch. You know, they're just like, look at that. They just have this sort of whimsy and movement to a garden, and they do come, so these are the white ones, they do come in a pink as well, but I've just never had any success with the pink ones. It's always the white ones that do well, so I'm sticking with what does well. And then we've got this little archway here, and this is the wisteria. So this is the first year, so this wisteria, I've only had this wisteria for a year. It is doing very well, as you can see, but is still too immature to flower, I believe. So while it has leafed out really well, we just won't have any flowers for a little while. But I have really enjoyed watching it sort of come back after winter and get all of its leaves. And then so just heading up the pathway here, I've got some cutting back to do. We've had a lot of storms recently, and so that's why it's looking a little bit messy up here. But up this area is looking really good as well. That's another cascade lily pilly with those beautiful pink pom-pom flowers. And these are those silver and purple succulents that I was sort of mentioning when I was back on the main path there. They're like a succulent plant. They're so hardy and they're beautiful. The colour. I love that sort of silver foliage, and those little tiny dainty purple flowers are very sweet. So I will need to pick up a few more of those. So, continuing with sort of my process for getting the garden to this state. So as we've said, to recap, first things first, be realistic. Be realistic with the space you have, be realistic with the amount of time you want to spend in your garden, and be realistic with your financial situation. If you can't... Step 2, so once you've got all of that, that will kind of define the style of garden that you want. So my garden is very much a wild sort of cottage style garden, but maybe you love formal gardens. Formal gardens take a little bit more work, but maybe that's exactly what you want. Maybe you have the time for that, and that's what you've always dreamed about having, is a really gorgeous formal garden with like topiaries and all sorts of things. Very quickly, I'm interrupting myself here, but look at those butterfly flowers. Oh, so gorgeous. I really hope that by sort of sharing my sort of little cottage garden with you, that if you're somebody who is interested in gardening and is interested in kind of creating a space for yourself, that it inspires you. This is the space I have, but everyone will be completely different. So whether it is a windowsill or a balcony or acres and acres of land, I hope you're inspired to create a space that you love and that brings you a lot of joy in this crazy world. And that may be acres of green, beautiful grass and a few garden beds. If that's what brings you joy, that's what you need to be doing, and that's what you should be working towards. Just very quickly, how pretty is that with all the green? And then you can see those just stunning pink roses over there. Yeah. But yeah, so that's sort of where we've recapped step 1. Step 2, once you've kind of been realistic, you know the style of garden you're going to do, the next step is to look at your structural requirements. If you want to put a pool in your backyard, you do that first. If you want, like I did, concrete pathways, look to do that. Get your irrigation, get your electricity, get all those kinds of things in place first up. Then once you have all of that in, the next step in the process is where the fun begins. Basically, hit up your local garden centre and start looking at plants. Keep in mind the style of garden you want. So if you're wanting a formal garden, you'll probably want to look for plants that sort of feed into that. For me, I have a sort of wild and wonderful cottage garden. So I look for plants that kind of fit into that as well. If you're new to gardening, I would highly recommend going to sort of an independent nursery. Independent nurseries often will have a little bit more time to spend with you, and they can really give you the best advice for, if one of your garden beds is in full sun and you have another garden bed that's in part shade, they'll be able to give you the best advice about what plants will suit that space and which ones will work best with your style of garden. If you're not someone who wants to invest a lot of time and you want a very low maintenance garden, they will be able to give you advice as to which plants sort of meet that criteria. So that is the next step. Once you've had your fun and you've started to get all your plants together and you've started to get your vision and you've placed your plants and all that kind of thing, it's really about scheduling time for maintenance. As I have said, there's always work. As we've walked around today, you have seen I've got deadheading to do, I've got cutting back to do, I have fertilizing, I need to fertilize the fruit trees and the vegetables. There is always work in a garden, and that is both sometimes very frustrating but a lot of times that's an incredible thing, to be able to come out into your space, and again, whether that is on your balcony or on your sunny windowsill in your kitchen, and you're just trimming back your little basil plant or things like that. That's so incredible that you can spend that time and be able to appreciate, the growth, and how it's such an incredible thing, I think, to watch the plants as they grow and they change seasonally and size. And if you're somebody who has a lot of stress in their life, sometimes being able to just come out and spend, your hour each week, or, a couple of days just for an hour each day, it's really de-stressing. I'm somebody who can be quite stressed. I deal with a lot in my life, and I can be quite stressed, and so being able to come out into the kitchen garden and being able to harvest my own vegetables, or just kind of sit and weed, or just trim things back, or as I said earlier, come out here with my cup of tea and just sit in one of the little seating areas I have and just really be present in the moment and in the space and listening to the birds coo and twitter. And, you know, you would have seen in, not last week's, but maybe the week before's video, we got lots of bird life here. We have rainbow lorikeets, we have kookaburras, just all sorts of things. I mean, I don't know if you can hear that bird now, but he's, you know, cooing away over there. It's, for me, it brings me a lot of peace and a lot of joy. If I'm feeling really stressed out, it's quite a grounding thing to do. But yes, so I think scheduling that time that you spend in your garden is important. I know for me, I'm very much a schedule person. So I sort of know I need to do 3 days of about 1 hour a day to kind of keep the garden at this level. My garden is about 6 years old, so it's quite established, and I have tried to plant things that are low maintenance and things that I don't have to do a lot with because and then I guess the last little thing that I wanted to sort of say, it's very much, gardening to me is very much a try again. Sometimes things won't work. Sometimes a plant just won't do well in a space. You know, as an example, you're allowed to make mistakes in that kind of thing. This is your space, you know, your garden, your balcony, your windowsill. It's your space to try things. You know, maybe you have that sunny kitchen windowsill and you decide you want to plant a little herb garden there. The fun of it, I think, and that's the fun of being able to experiment and try new things. And so I definitely think try hard to not take yourself too seriously and really just try and enjoy it. Enjoy that time where you're disconnecting from technology and you're just out here, you know, watching the seasons change and the flowers. And, you know, you've seen today as I've been walking around all these beautiful new flowers, and, you know, the plants are just growing so much at this time of year. And yeah. So that's sort of the last thing I kind of wanted to say on that. And that's definitely been my sort of learning experience with gardening. And just walk around out here just when the world is a little bit crazy and I'm feeling really stressed. It's really something that brings me that, I mean, I've said it a million times, but it brings me that joy. So yes, I hope this kind of thing inspires you as well, if gardening is something you think would bring you joy. But so we've kind of covered a lot of this back garden space. So I just want to take you around to the other sort of side garden now. I just wanted to show you out here. I have these really gorgeous vine sort of plants. I have sort of two. This is quite a large sort of tree here, and so I have one of these, and then on this side and another on the other side. But they've got these really just stunning sort of branches. Like, look how it's coiled around. I mean, that's it doing it itself. Very beautiful. I have, so this here is sort of like a little chest that I store like potting mixes and things like that in, just so they're all in one space, and if it rains and things like that, they're kind of protected from the elements here. Gorgeous little statue here. This here, so you can see it's very messy out this area, but it's just my practical space. So this is just my little potting shed, my little potting bench. And then up here we've got garden covers and then my little sort of potting shed. Ivy, and it's flowering. I love plants that have this sort of habit to them, like quite like a mounding sort of mass sort of habit. I just think they look really cute. And then it's sort of hard to get it into the frame of the camera here. This is my little potting shed. So it's a little 2-door potting shed, both sides open all the way out, and I can just kind of get in there and access all of my, you know, excess pots, all my gardening tools, you know, gardening gloves, all that kind of thing is all sort of stored in here. But yes, I think that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed having a bit of a update on this back garden and the sort of side gardens. Everything is just doing so well at this time of year. There's so much flowering and so much growth. And I hope you've also sort of liked the insight into how I'm kind of, or how I constantly kind of evolve this space and how I created this space from kind of a blank canvas of just grass to what you've sort of seen today as we've gone around. And just to reiterate, gardening isn't for everyone, and I appreciate it's not for everyone, but if you are somebody who thinks you would enjoy it, yeah, that was sort of just my thoughts on my process and what has worked for me to create this space. And as I said in the beginning, it is by no means done. It will constantly evolve, and I'll try different plants and, you know, different statues and different seating and all sorts of things over the, you know, over each season changes, or, you know, I go and visit some beautiful botanical gardens and things like that, and I get inspiration from that, and I think, oh, I could do something similar on a smaller scale in my garden. So it's definitely something that's ever evolving. But I do hope that you have enjoyed it, having this sort of little wander around and just, yeah, you felt a little bit inspired. And even if you're not somebody who wants to garden yourself, I hope you've kind of just enjoyed seeing my garden and, you know, having me share something with you that brings me a lot of joy and a lot of happiness. But yeah, so I am going to bid you farewell now. I hope you have really enjoyed this video. I hope you've taken a little bit of inspiration from this for whatever sort of size garden you have, whether you're just really wanting to try some herbs in your kitchen or anything like that. As I mentioned earlier, I have some very, very exciting things coming up, so please subscribe for that. I normally sort of do one video a week, but I do actually have yeah, as I said, some very, very exciting things coming up. So in the event I have additional content to share, I might do some sort of bonus videos and things. So if you subscribe, so subscribing, if you're not aware, it's free for you to subscribe on YouTube. So if you subscribe, you will get a little notification when I upload a video, just so that you're aware if I'm uploading any bonus content. But yeah, so I will see you next week for another video. Bye.